This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
You are what you watch. Hello, my name's Harrington Wadko. Welcome to our program. The topic for tonight is how does democracy work? It seems the vice presidential debate and even the presidential candidates all contesting for the position of president seem to have become very populist, meaning anything everybody wants, let's just give it to them. Let's promise them everything. I mean, it was amazing how Chis Escudero promised the moon to everybody in the crowd and how the crowd cheered. Is this how we run government? While we understand that democracy is the rule of the majority, think about it. What the majority wants, or what we call the masa here in the Philippines, everybody would like free this, free that, no taxes, and you know, whatnot. The populist vote, or what everybody would really want, is not exactly how a democracy or an economy can work. You need some type of discipline, some type of regulation before anything actually can work. Hindi naman pwede po kung anong gusto ni Juan at kung sino man ibibigay mo. Number one, hindi naman kaya ng ekonomiya, hindi kaya ng pera, maraming rason. But in an election, everything is promised. But let's try to understand our system, our very funny system of governance, which we call a democracy. We have party list representation. We have over 200 or 300 party lists, meaning everybody's supposed to be represented, and yet we have a presidential system. For some funny reason, I can't see any real presentation or representation of anybody because of the conflict of how this system is put together. This mestizo type system that we have has been like this. We all understand the problems, and yet the very legislators that we have been electing the last 4 decades seem to not want to do anything. And what has happened, obviously, you have the metastasization of dynasties, oligarchs. All you need to do now is to be a celebrity, be popular, and you will get into that position. Is that how we run our democracy? This contest, which we are seeing an election with in the next 3 weeks, exactly what is it bringing us? Again, the popular, again, the dynasties, again, the oligarchs. Is this the way we want to run our country? Do you know, for example, do you understand what you represent, what you want, and how you want to get things done? There has to be some type of discipline, and the template that we are using right now in this governance or this government, which we call the Republic of, let's see, it's called the Democratic Republic. That by itself confuses me, because when you talk of the Republic, you're talking of the good of the country. And yet when you talk of a straight democracy, you're talking of the rule of the majority. But does the majority, do they know what they want, and can it be given to them? Or is it supposed to be country or state first, and then the people? It all gets very confusing. To discuss this issue with us, I've asked Rommel Sangalang, a Filipino. He was born, well, he's an American citizen, but he was born here, and at the age of 5, went off to America and has lived there. He's been an American, still is to date, and he has enlightened me on the system, because watching the elections in America has gotten quite confusing in the last 2-3 months, because you have the grand old party or the Republicans and you have the Democrats. And how the elections work. It's not necessarily the rule or the voting of the majority in a given area, but what they call the delegates, the super delegates. He'll explain that briefly to us to help us understand how the American democratic government has put in place a system to stop the Aquinos, the families like the Aquinos, the two Aquinos that have come into the presidency, the Estradas, the celebrities that we have seen that have not performed, be it in the Senate, in town mayors or whatnot. Most especially with the presidency, because this is how they do it. They control, there's a regulation, there's a system to stop the non-competent to come up to office to make a fool of that country. We also have Butch Valdez. He's an economist. He's the chairman of the rouche Society, who has been very, very active. He's actually a very sharp political analyst based on the studies in the discipline of the rouche Society. Gentlemen, salamat for being here. Let's start with the American system first to help us understand. Rommel, without going to too many details, please explain to us how the delegates work within the 50 states and then the super delegates, because we here in the Philippines look at it, election, number of people, majority vote. He who gets the majority vote gets to win. It doesn't work like that in the States, correct?
No, it doesn't at all. So what happens after every 10 years during the census is that we redistrict populous areas.
So, okay, when you redistrict populous areas, it's the population of certain areas.
Yes, it's an agreed upon government standing that you can only have so many representatives, and since our population grows, you don't grow the number of representatives, you reallocate the population to the maximum number of representatives allowed by the U.S. government.
So how many delegates, for example, you have 350 million people in America, you have 50 states, assuming it's all divided by, you're talking about 30 million per state, or 3 million per state, correct?
Yeah.
And if one state has 6 million and the other only has 1, does the 1 million population, they have less delegates?
They do, but what happens really, the problem is that when a state like in Ohio, which has been losing population for the last 15 years, loses their population to California and Washington,
because people moving about,
then they will lose the delegates to those states.
And these delegates, how are they appointed, assigned, or are they voted?
Each one of the parties has a technical description of how each state will run their delegation. So some states are all delegations, so on a popular vote, they will win all of the delegations. Some states are broken into, depending on the district that's been won. Some delegates also hand over super delegations, which is the governor, the Senate of Representatives, they also have a vote. So each party...
the politicians, the leaders who have a mandate, they're the super delegates.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So each state again and each party will determine how the delegates are won. This is very confusing because you cross over a state and it's all different. The way you can win all the delegates, well, a majority of the delegates, or even half the delegates, even though you don't win the popular vote, is because if you can look at each district as a glass of water instead of numbers. So each glass of water has an amount in it.
Which is the population.
But if you won all the majority of the glass of water, that doesn't mean you have the majority of the water, if that makes any sense. Because
no, please explain again.
So if you have 4 glasses of water, right, and one of them is barely full,
right,
the other one is half full,
one's 3/4,
and then one's 3/4 full,
one's full,
right, you can still win the barely full and the barely half full, but that doesn't represent the number of delegates in the glass.
So the minority can win. A minority vote can win.
It's winning the glass that's important, not the amount of water.
Okay.
It's winning the glass that's important. The glass could be barely anything in it, but you won the glass, so you won those votes.
And these delegates belong to either just the two parties, the Republican and the Democrats. They cannot cross. A Democrat delegate cannot cross to the Republican.
Well, so it gets confusing because each state allows sometimes a Republican delegation to have open voting. So what will happen is the Libertarians and the Democrats will go to a Republican convention just to sabotage the whole thing.
Okay.
there are 50 states.
Yes,
And
50.
each state is allowed its own rules no?
Yeah.
within a certain general parameters. No? So they're functioning according to that. That's why, like you said, the minority can win.
Can
because
win.
there's certain areas where they say winner take all.
Yes.
If you win, let's say in the contest of delegates, of let us say 100 delegates, and somebody has 52 and the other has 48, no? And the 48 loses, of course.
Right.
The winner gets the whole 100.
That's state dependent. Depends on the state.
It depends
Doesn't that
on the
make it, okay, doesn't that system make the democratic process more confusing for the people? Because it's not the popular vote.
Yes. So what happens now is...
So why is America promoting democracy, the rule of the majority, when it's not the popular vote?
If I could bring up where democracy started in the ancient
Right.
world, right? You have Sparta and you have Greece. Greece is fully democratic. It's majority rule, whatever majority says. Sparta is what you said, which is a federalist state. And
The
that's
republic.
that's where the term draconian comes in. You steal a head of cabbage, you lose your limb. You steal 100,000 pieces of gold, you lose your limb.
Yeah. So discipline is introduced.
Because of the country. The country is above the people. Versus Greece, Greece was the populace.
Well, like Rommel said, I just wanted to add, democracy is just a system of decision making, right? Rather than one person making a decision for all, no? In many cases, people in a society were forced to consult. And as they move towards consulting the others, no, it started to be the majority says this, so it moves towards that. So, and then you expand that into a whole society wherein the people are now supposed to participate in the decision making of government, right? Now, however, when
you say the people, that's the delegates already.
No,
that's
I'm
the
talking
basic
about.
voter. That's the basic
I'm
voter.
just the concept, so that the people, let's say in a government, in a state, because it's so big, you cannot have all of the people making that one decision except the choice of a leader. So what happens is, the people, in order to make that so-called decision, they choose their own representative, no, to participate in the decision making of governance for themselves. Now, there are ramifications in this system of choice and decision making, which we call democracy. The problem with that is this system of choices, this system of decision making, is so susceptible to abuse, because
you're talking to Greece, the democracy of Greece, for example.
No, well, that term of decision making and method really came from Greece then, during Socrates' time and so on. And this guy Solon comes in and rationalizes how this thing is going to be done. No, the Solon is of legislator. No, and as years went by, no, you move towards participatory type of decision making, and that was called democracy. Now, other people look for different ways wherein they can accommodate the people's idea as to how decisions will be made. In contrast, however, to monarchies, kings, you don't need the people to make it.
You don't need the people. No, it's
Right.
dictatorial, it's the king, the
no,
queen.
the king. It's a monarchy.
Yes, it's a
The
monarchy.
king decides
The
that,
king
and
decides.
everybody's a
Follows,
subject.
yes.
Okay, so that is where you should probably look at the contrast, no? Between a monarchical or dictatorial type of
Can't we
and a system where choices are made. Now, the system of choices, like you already has been explained, America, no? It does not necessarily mean it's the greatest system. No? It does not necessarily mean. Neither will you say our system is correct or any other system. Why? Because democracies, no, are susceptible to abuse.
You're one shade away from socialism. You bring up Greece right now. They're a socialist country. And they started democracy.
Okay. Going back to the analogy, or just in contrast, you have Sparta and you have Greece, the rule of the majority, versus the republic, or what we call the rule of the disciplined community. What is America today? The rule of a disciplined majority, meaning government comes in. If you steal, I'll put you in jail. You do something, you get penalized. In other words, there's regulation. Or is it the rule of the majority, which they espouse all over the world? You know, hey, let everybody rule. Is that what you have?
So again, we're going to go back two definitions, right? When it first started in 1776, they wanted a confederal or a confederalism or confederates, where each state is basically its own little country and they protect themselves.
The federal system that we've all been discussing for some time in this country.
Actually, the federal system is when the Washington, D.C. says, look, I'm still going to be over you guys. So they had to make another vote saying we're going to have one central government, Congress, and a president, but the smaller states or the states can have their own laws. For instance, you can go to one state as a same-sex couple and get married,
and not be allowed in the
then
next.
Move to another state and your marriage is null and void because
Right.
they have separate laws and they're allowed to do that.
That's the federal system.
That's a federal system.
I just wanted to point out that as we're talking about America and connote it with democracy, I wanted to point out that in the whole Constitution, and the foundation of the Constitution was the Declaration of Independence. Not a single time do you see the word democracy.
You don't.
But you see it when they start talking about the system that they're going to use in decision making. Okay, and that you see it as part of that system, but you don't see the word democracy.
That's the Declaration, but not the Constitution. It's
Right.
two different things.
It's the Declaration is different from the Constitution, but by itself, the basis of the Constitution is the Declaration. You see, and what is written in the Declaration are a declaration of principles.
Bingo.
All men are created equal. That by itself was a very controversial statement at that time.
No, of course,
when the
we
whole
know.
world was being run
Yes.
by monarchies, right? No, but precisely, this is what I'm trying to get at. We must, when we talk, the system of choices will be as we decide it to be. If it's going to be this, if it's going to be PICOs, machines, and so on, manual, whatever. That's going. But the country must be based on certain strong, very strong principles, and we must adhere to these principles. And when we say that, as the U.S. had declared it, it's a universal document as far as I'm concerned, that there are inalienable rights that everyone, every single human being
Which is enshrined in the Constitution.
well, the Declaration of Independence, that we have inalienable rights as we are born, right to life, right to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Which cannot be overruled by a majority vote of any sort.
No, nothing.
Even if you're a democracy and everybody wants to get rid of that, it's impossible.
It is an inalienable right. It
Okay,
is nature to the human being.
Okay, we're going to have to take a short break, ladies and gentlemen. If you're as confused as I am, don't be, because that's exactly why we are discussing it. Not necessarily to argue it, but to try and understand the concept of democracy so you and I can understand and go forward from there. Of course, the nagging question. If that being the case, you have the Declaration of Independence, you have the Constitution, you have the concept of democracy, and the rule and the vote of the majority, what are we in the Philippines? Gee, stay with us, we'll come right back.